My name is Gale. I'm 28 years old. And this is the story of how my own mother tried to trap me for millions, and how I turned her plan inside out. The morning it all began was ordinary. Too ordinary. I remember how the sunlight barely filtered through the blinds of my tiny apartment outside Savannah, Georgia. I was stirring a spoon through a lukewarm cup of coffee when my phone rang, loud, sharp, like it knew the news it carried would shatter everything I thought I knew about family. "Ms. Gale Franklin," came the deep, deliberate voice. "This is Charles Allen. I'm your grandfather's estate attorney. We need to meet, he's left everything to you." Everything? I clutched the phone like it was a lifeline. My grandfather, Mr. Franklin, was the only man who ever raised me with dignity and care. After my parents' divorce, it was him who held my hand through scraped knees and high school heartbreaks. It was him who gave me values when my own mother, Eleanor, walked out without so much as a backward glance. Now, 2 weeks after his funeral, after that gray, weepy morning where neighbors and old store employees spoke about his kindness, I was told he'd left me his entire estate. I thought grief was all I'd have to deal with. I was wrong. $3 million in assets. A chain of hardware stores. Prime riverfront property. A portfolio my grandfather quietly built behind the scenes. And the house I grew up in. When I walked into Mr. Allen's office for the reading of the will, I wasn't expecting my mother to be there. She sat across from me in a wine-colored dress and pearls she couldn't possibly afford without someone else's money. Her face was stone until the will was read. I saw it in her eyes. She wasn't here for closure. She was here for the kill. "You can't be serious," she spat, slamming her hand on the table so hard Mr. Allen's glass of water nearly tipped. "This is mine. This is family property. She's nothing but a..." "Mrs. Eleanor," Mr. Allen cut in sharply. "This will was verified when Mr. Franklin was of sound mind and witnessed by legal counsel. It is binding." Her fury turned cold as she looked at me, like I was a stranger. Or worse, an enemy. "You're really going to keep all of this for yourself," she hissed, voice low but seething. "After everything I've done?" I couldn't even find words. So many emotions crashed into me at once: grief, betrayal, disbelief. But somehow, I steadied my voice. "I'm not going against Grandpa's wishes." She leaned in close, a twisted smile on her face. "Then you better be ready to regret it." She stormed out of the office, heels hammering the floor with every step. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. That she'd grieve and accept it. But I underestimated her hunger for control, for revenge, and most of all, for money that wasn't hers. The next few days turned into a psychological war. Calls. Messages. Letters. Some were laced with syrupy sweet guilt. Others came straight from the pit: accusations, threats, manipulation. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had something to say. "Family comes first, Gale," they said. "Don't you think you owe your mother a little something?" Even my younger brother, Kyle, texted me with guilt trips. "She's not sleeping. She's barely eating. Is this really what Grandpa would have wanted?" And my sister, Vanessa, whom I trusted more than anyone, just said it plain. "Gale, you're being selfish." Selfish? I wanted to scream. I was the one Grandpa trusted. I was the one who stayed when everyone else vanished. But they all made me out to be the villain. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Couldn't even cry anymore. But I remembered what Grandpa used to say. "When people show you their character, don't look away." So I went back to Mr. Allen. Told him everything. That's when he gave me the key that unlocked the truth. "Mr. Franklin told me," he said, "that if this ever happened, you'd need to see the financial records from his final years. Maybe then, things will be clearer." That night, I sat in Mr. Allen's office, surrounded by files yellowed with age but heavy with meaning. My grandfather, methodical, sharp, had kept notes. Tens of thousands of dollars. Handwritten transactions. His own daughter, my mother, had bled him dry. One note read. Gave Eleanor $25,000 for roof repairs. Next day, new Lexus. Another. $15,000 for Kyle's tuition. No receipt. No response to follow-up. And the one that broke my heart. $10,000 for Vanessa's hospital bill. Later saw Facebook photos, Miami trip. Beach party. I sat there, trembling, breath caught in my chest. They had used him. Used his kindness. And now they were coming after me to continue the cycle. My grief turned to fury. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The cold, precise kind. The kind you weaponize. Because if my mother thought I would roll over, she didn't know me at all. The invitation, or rather, the command, came on a rainy Saturday afternoon. A text from my mother that read like a veiled threat more than a family reunion. The family needs to sit down together. 3 p.m. tomorrow. At my house. No more excuses, Gale. It's time to end this. I stared at the screen, my fingers numb. There was no warmth in her words. No hint of reconciliation. Just pressure. Control. A trap. But I didn't panic. I prepared. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, the file folder open in front of me. I pulled out the will, Grandpa's ledger, printouts of financial transfers, and the screenshots of my mother's posts flaunting her new cars and luxury vacations. I even had saved voicemails, some where my mother threatened me directly, and one from Craig, her boyfriend, too drunk to realize he was admitting to everything. And I recorded them all. I didn't sleep a minute that night, but not from fear. I was focused. Determined. Every time I felt my resolve shake, I looked up at the photo of Grandpa Franklin hanging above my desk. He had once told me, "You don't have to shout to prove the truth, Gale. You just have to be willing to stand alone with it." The next day, I arrived at the house I grew up in. The house that was now legally mine. My mother opened the door with a triumphant smirk, wearing a silk blouse and heels like she was hosting a press conference. "Gale," she said with a mock-warm smile, "I knew you'd come to your senses." I didn't respond. I walked inside, clutching the folder like armor. The living room looked staged. Neat. Cold. Not like home. Craig was already there, arms folded, perched on the armrest like a guard dog. Vanessa sat rigid on the sofa, avoiding my eyes. Kyle was quiet, fidgeting with his hoodie string. But it was the two strangers sitting at the dining table that told me everything I needed to know. "This is Mr. Miller and Mr. Scott," my mother said sweetly. "Advisors. They're here to help facilitate a fair agreement." Mr. Miller nodded, already sliding a manila folder across the polished wood. "We've drafted a mutual ownership transfer," he began. "It simply recognizes that this estate, while technically under your name, belongs to the entire family. Your mother will serve as administrator for everyone's benefit. All we need is your signature." I sat down, slowly. Opened the file. It was a total transfer of control. Once I signed, I'd lose everything: stores, properties, investments. No way back. "Before I sign anything," I said, pulling out my own folder, "I'd like to ask a few questions." "Gale," my mother warned, her voice sharp. "Don't start drama." I kept my voice calm. "Just clarity. For fairness." I opened the ledger Grandpa had kept. March 12th. "You asked him for $20,000 to fix the roof. 3 days later, you bought a new car. Here's the dealership receipt and your Instagram post: new wheels, new life, feeling blessed." The room fell into stunned silence. Craig shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Scott coughed into his sleeve. I turned another page. September. You asked for $15,000 for Kyle's hospital bills. Kyle, were you ever in the hospital that month? Kyle looked up, eyes wide. No. I was at school. Exactly. And the same week, you and Craig were tagged in Palm Springs. I hit play on my phone, and Craig's drunken voice filled the room. The old man was gonna give it all to her. We just had to wait until he croaked. That stubborn idiot should have handed it to Eleanor years ago. Craig sprang up. Turn that off. I didn't. You all want fairness. But this, I gestured to the table, is manipulation, deception, and greed. I'm not signing a single thing. And if you threaten me again, this all goes straight to the courts. My mother slammed her hand on the table. You little snake. After everything I've done for you. I stood. Everything you've done was for yourself. Not me. And not Grandpa. Then something happened I didn't expect. Kyle stood up too. Mom, he said quietly, is it true? About the tuition money? About the car? The vacations? She turned to him, furious. Don't start, Kyle. But he didn't back down. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to get involved. But now. I see what you've done. Craig growled, you're just a kid. Sit down. No, Kyle said. I'm done sitting down. The room was cracking, splintering like glass under pressure. Mr. Miller and Mr. Scott were already packing up, stammering apologies. We, believe this is a personal matter after all. Best of luck to everyone involved. They practically ran out the door. Then Vanessa, my sister, who hadn't said a word, finally looked up. Her eyes were rimmed red. Gale, is everything you said true? I didn't answer her with words. I just handed her the folder. Vanessa flipped through it slowly. Her hands trembled. She closed it and stared at the floor. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't want to know. My mother shrieked, you're all turning on me? After everything I gave you? No, Mom, Kyle said quietly. You took. And now it's over. She lunged toward me, face red with rage. You'll regret this, Gale. I swear, I'll never forgive you. I didn't flinch. Maybe not, I said. But Grandpa will. And I turned and walked out. Kyle followed me without a word, leaving behind a room full of silence, shattered pride, and a woman who thought she could rewrite history with a signature. She never expected I'd bring receipts instead. The door slammed behind us like the final punctuation on a chapter one never thought I'd live through. Kyle and I stood outside on the porch in silence, the gray sky above barely holding back rain, the air heavy with the stench of betrayal. He looked over at me, his hands stuffed in his hoodie, eyes brimming with conflict. I didn't want to believe it, he said softly, but I saw the bank statements, the receipts, and I remembered everything she bought. I just nodded. Words didn't matter right now. But his next sentence did. I'm with you, Gale. Whatever happens next, I'm not letting you go through it alone. That single sentence shattered something in me. The last few weeks had worn me down to a thread. But now I felt something return to me, like a light flickering back to life. We got in my car and didn't look back. That night, we sat in silence in my small apartment, eating reheated lasagna and staring out the window. It wasn't comfortable, but it was real. Kyle sat on the couch, bouncing his leg, his voice hesitant when he finally broke the silence. Vanessa, do you think she'll come around? I stared at my grandfather's portrait on the wall. His eyes seemed to ask the same thing. I don't know, I said. But I'm done waiting for people to choose right. I'm going to act. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. First, to Mrs. Harriet, the attorney Grandpa had worked with for years, the one he trusted most. She was calm but sharp, and when I explained everything that had happened, she didn't hesitate. "You did the right thing walking out," she said. "Now let's protect you legally, once and for all." Within 2 days, we had filed the necessary motions in court. A protective order to prevent harassment. An official motion to affirm the will's validity. And most importantly, a petition attaching evidence of attempted coercion, asset misrepresentation, and verbal abuse, just in case. We included everything: the financial records, the screenshots, the voice recordings, and a sworn affidavit I signed, detailing every interaction since Grandpa's passing. Harriet made sure it was watertight. "Let them try," she said. "They won't get far." The second phone call was more personal. It was time I stopped surviving and started building. I called the director of operations at the Franklin hardware chain, Mr. Evers, and told him I would be taking over active leadership. He sounded surprised but not disappointed. "Your grandfather believed in you, Gale. I was wondering when you'd take the reins." I didn't waste time. I cleared my schedule and went on a statewide tour, visiting each of the stores Grandpa had built with his bare hands. From the worn-down building in Pooler with the flickering open sign, to the slightly more modern flagship store near downtown Savannah. The employees were wary at first. I could see it in their eyes, the quiet skepticism, the polite nods. But I didn't come in with speeches. I came in with questions. How are things really going? What do you need that no one's given you? What would you change if you had the chance? At the store in Hinesville, an older cashier named Marvin pulled me aside and said, "No one's asked me that in 20 years. I smiled. "You're being asked now." Kyle came with me on every trip, skipping classes when he had to. But I didn't stop him. Because every time he opened his notebook, asked the staff questions, or ran numbers behind the scenes, I saw Grandpa in him. At night, we talked business, suppliers, marketing, budgeting. During the day, we repaired broken counters, handed out staff appreciation cards, and updated policies. Slowly but surely, something shifted. Morale. Loyalty. Sales. And me? I started to see a different version of myself in the mirror. Not the girl begging for approval. Not the woman fighting to survive. But someone in control. Someone standing on the legacy of a man who believed in doing right, even when it hurt. A month later, Kyle walked into my office, face lit up with excitement. "I've got an idea," he said. "A green showroom. Just one to start. All eco-friendly products, sustainable suppliers, maybe even offer DIY classes. Grandpa always said we should support the future, right?" He looked so proud, so energized, I could barely speak. I grabbed his shoulders and said, "Get me the numbers. If it works on paper, we do it." We started building a business plan that same night. But just when it felt like everything was turning around, I got a call. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Gale, it's Vanessa." Her voice sounded so small I almost didn't recognize it. "I know I don't deserve a thing from you. But I need to talk. Not about the inheritance. Not about Mom. Just, you and me." I stayed quiet for a moment. Then said, "If you're serious, we meet in public." She agreed. The next evening, we sat across from each other at a riverside cafe. The same one Grandpa used to take us to as kids. Vanessa looked thinner. Paler. And for once, she wasn't dressed to impress. She was just Vanessa. "I didn't know the whole truth," she said, eyes welling. "But I also didn't want to know. I defended Mom because I was scared. And wrong. And ashamed." I sipped my coffee slowly, watching her carefully. "I'm not asking you to fix everything," she whispered. "I just want to say I'm sorry. Truly." That apology cut deeper than any insult ever had. Because it came from someone I had loved and lost. But it didn't heal everything. Not yet. I hear you, I said gently. And I believe you. But rebuilding trust takes time. Vanessa nodded, her eyes shining. I'll do whatever it takes. I didn't smile. But I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. It was a start. And maybe, just maybe, the first piece of something whole again. The weeks after that cafe meeting with Vanessa passed like quiet ripples in a deep pond. Not a splash. Not a storm. Just movement, steady, slow, and somehow healing. Vanessa began reaching out, but not to make demands. She asked about Kyle's classes, sent me leads on local green suppliers, and even introduced me to a builder she'd met through her old job who specialized in sustainable materials. It wasn't just words. She was trying. Still, I didn't drop my guard. One morning, I found an envelope slipped under the front door of my apartment. My breath hitched when I saw the handwriting. It was from my mother. Inside was a short letter. No dramatic declarations. Just this. Gale. I've started therapy. I don't know what healing looks like yet. I only know I need to try. Not for forgiveness. Not even for your approval. But because I've lived too long in bitterness. If you ever decide to meet, I'll be here. Eleanor. I reread it 3 times. Then sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, overwhelmed by something I couldn't name, grief, maybe. Or just the exhaustion of carrying anger too long. I didn't respond immediately. I needed time. Instead, I poured my energy into the foundation I had quietly been building with Mrs. Harriet and Kyle, the Franklin Foundation. We launched it with an initial $100,000, dedicated to helping underprivileged youth learn entrepreneurship and trade skills. It wasn't charity. It was opportunity. We partnered with schools, offered weekend workshops, and even gave away 5 $2,000 starter grants to teens with viable business ideas. Every time a kid emailed me their pitch deck or showed up with spark in their eyes, I felt closer to Grandpa. He would have loved this. The green showroom Kyle proposed had finally opened its doors too. The green corner was just a small section inside the Savannah flagship store, but it was stocked with eco-friendly lumber, recycled insulation, and biodegradable sealants. Our weekend DIY classes drew dozens of curious customers, and the local paper even ran a story about it. We were making something real. Something lasting. Then came the email. Subject line, I'm asking to see you. Please read this through. It was from Mom. I opened it slowly. The message was long, vulnerable, different from anything she'd ever written. Gale. I've spent many sleepless nights writing these words. Therapy has forced me to look in the mirror. And what I see isn't someone I'm proud of. I manipulated, I lied, I chased approval through material things, and worst of all, I hurt the people I should have loved the most. I can't fix the past. But I want to learn how to live differently. Please, just meet with me once. If you walk away afterward, I'll understand. Mom. I stared at the screen for nearly an hour. My heart warred with itself. I had faced off with her at her most venomous. But now she was this? I showed the email to Kyle. He read it and said only one thing, whatever you choose, I'm behind you. So I agreed to meet. I chose a small cafe near the river, neutral ground, open air, nothing tied to memory. When I arrived, she was already sitting by the window, no designer clothes, no gold chains, just a soft sweater and a scarf wrapped neatly around her neck. When she looked up, her eyes were puffy. Not from vanity this time. From crying. Thank you for coming, she said softly. I sat across from her. Say what you need to say, Mom. She didn't flinch. She nodded, took a deep breath, and began. I was cruel. To you. To Grandpa. To everyone. I justified it for years, told myself I deserved what he gave you. That I had been overlooked. That you were just some ungrateful little girl who got lucky. I said nothing. But it wasn't about the money, she whispered. It was about control. I never felt safe growing up. Your grandfather's love for you. I think it scared me. Because it reminded me what I never had. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. I know you owe me nothing, she said. I don't even expect a second chance. But I needed to say it. And to say I'm sorry. Her voice broke on the word sorry. And for the first time in my life, I didn't hear performance. I heard regret. Real regret. I sat back in my chair, heart thudding. I can't erase what happened, I said quietly. But I'm willing to try talking like this. One conversation at a time. Her eyes flooded. She smiled, a weak, unpolished smile. But real. We sat there for over an hour. She asked about the showroom, the foundation. She even smiled when I told her Kyle was leading meetings now. That wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. In the weeks that followed, she moved into a small, modest apartment near a park. Started cooking. Gardening. Vanessa visited often, said she'd never seen her like this. Craig? He was gone. Quietly. Finally. One Sunday evening, Kyle and I visited her. She had planted yellow marigolds along the porch. She offered us tea. No grand speeches. No guilt trips. Just tea. Vanessa came by later that evening too, laughing as she held up a flyer. I'm thinking of going back to school, she said. Social work. I want to do something that matters. I looked at her and smiled for real this time. That night, I lay in bed, my eyes drifting to the ceiling. Maybe healing wasn't a straight line. Maybe it came in broken pieces, conversations, apologies, efforts. Maybe it was enough to start small and let grace do the rest. And maybe, just maybe, we were finally becoming a family that didn't need secrets to stay together. Spring crept in gently that year, with pale blue skies and the scent of magnolia blooming along the sidewalks of Savannah. The air felt lighter, not just outside, but inside my chest too. Things were finally shifting. The Franklin hardware stores had turned a quiet corner. For the first time in nearly a decade, the quarterly numbers showed real growth. And not just revenue, employee retention had improved, customer satisfaction was up, and our little green corner showroom had become a community talking point. One morning, Kyle burst into my office, his face alight with something electric. 2 local builders just signed with us exclusively for eco-materials, he said breathlessly, waving a folder. And one of them wants to host their client consultations inside the showroom. I didn't say anything. I just stood, crossed the room, and wrapped my arms around him. You did this, I whispered. No, he murmured back. We did. And we had. What had started as survival, me defending Grandpa's legacy with trembling hands, was now evolving into purpose. Together, Kyle and I had turned pain into a blueprint. And we were just getting started. That same week, I got a call from our local community center. They'd heard about the Franklin Foundation's youth grants and wanted to host a career night where I'd speak as a local business leader. At first, I hesitated. But Kyle nudged me. Grandpa would have said yes. So I did. The night of the event, I stood in a crowded hall of folding chairs and hopeful faces. Some were kids barely in high school. Others were single moms. Veterans. People just trying. I told them what Grandpa always told me, success isn't measured in what you own. It's measured in how you show up when everything's on the line. And then I told them how I almost gave it all away to keep the peace, until I realized peace without self-respect isn't peace at all. After my talk, a girl no older than 17 came up to me. Her hands were shaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "Miss Gale," she said. "I didn't think people like us could run anything." I looked her in the eye and said, "People like us were born to run everything. We just need to stop asking for permission." The applause that night still echoes in my memory. But even as my world expanded, the wounds of the past still had to be faced. One afternoon, I dropped off documents at my mother's apartment. She'd been living quietly for months now, no Craig, no chaos, no pretense. Just her books, her flower pots, and her therapist. I expected a short visit. But as I was about to leave, she held up a faded envelope. "I found something," she said. "You might want it." Inside was a letter. Dated 8 months before Grandpa passed. It was written in his neat, slow script. My heart caught as I unfolded it. "Gale. If you're reading this, it means the storm has begun. I hope you're standing tall, even if your knees shake. I've seen things I never spoke of. I've watched your mother take and take, and I've watched you learn how to give with grace. That's why I left it all to you. Not because I loved you more, but because I knew you would do more with it. Build something. Share it. Protect it. And never let anyone tell you what you don't deserve. Love. Grandpa." I sat down slowly on the edge of her couch, letter clutched tight in my hands. Mom was staring at the floor. "I never knew he wrote that," she said. "I don't think he wanted me to see it." I looked over at her. For once, there was no bitterness in her eyes. Just tired acceptance. "He was right," she said. "You've done more with it than I ever could." That moment didn't fix us. But it was honest. Weeks turned to months. The Macon branch of Franklin Hardware opened with fanfare and a surprising turnout from local officials. We cut the ribbon under a wooden arch Kyle had built himself. And during the opening remarks, he did something I didn't expect. He asked Vanessa to speak. At first, she looked panicked. But then she stepped forward, took the microphone, and said, "My sister saved this family. And I don't mean financially. I mean she brought us out of the lies, the shame, and the silence we'd lived in for years. She reminded us that honesty isn't a weakness. It's the only way to grow." People clapped. My eyes blurred. That night, the three of us sat on my apartment balcony, me, Kyle, and Vanessa, drinking tea and watching the city lights. There were no long speeches. Just laughter, quiet moments, and something that felt dangerously close to peace. It wasn't a perfect family. But it was a real one. And I'd take that over a fantasy any day. By summer, the transformation was undeniable, not just in the business, but in us. The Franklin Hardware brand had evolved into something Grandpa would have never imagined, yet fully approved of. Our new stores in Brunswick and Macon weren't just retail spaces, they were part hardware shop, part community hub. We had spaces set aside for workshops, local business demos, even weekend events for families. And people came. They didn't come for discounts or flashy ads. They came because they felt like they belonged. Each month, I hosted free sessions on basic home repair and green living. Kyle, now a confident public speaker, led budgeting workshops for young entrepreneurs. Vanessa coordinated local vendor events and started mentoring women looking to rebuild their lives after abuse or addiction. Even Mom began volunteering. She didn't ask for attention or praise. She just showed up, sweeping floors, planting flowers, packing community welcome bags. She was changing, slowly and genuinely, and though I never told her this, I started seeing glimpses of the woman she might have been if bitterness hadn't ruled her for so long. Then, something happened that I hadn't expected. Ben proposed. It wasn't dramatic. No flash mobs. No over-the-top setup. It happened under the old oak tree in Forsyth Park, the one Grandpa and I used to sit beneath on Sunday afternoons. Ben dropped to one knee, holding a small, simple ring in his hand. Tess, he said quietly, I can't promise life will always be easy. But I promise I'll stand by you when it isn't. I said yes. And for once, the tears that streamed down my face weren't from pain, fear, or exhaustion. They were from joy. From relief. From the calm that comes after a long, violent storm. We held a small engagement dinner at a local inn, just 20 people. Close friends. A few employees. Kyle. Vanessa. Even Mom. She wore a simple navy blue dress and brought a handmade card. Nothing flashy. Nothing performative. Just love. I gave a short toast, thanking everyone for standing by me, especially those who hadn't at first, but came back when it mattered. Vanessa cried. Kyle hugged me so hard I thought my ribs might crack. And Mom, she whispered in my ear, your grandfather would have been so proud. I believed her. That night, after everyone left, Ben and I walked through the dark, quiet streets of Savannah. I looked up at the windows of the old buildings and thought of Grandpa. Do you think he'd be proud of this? I asked. Ben stopped and turned to me. Gale, he didn't just want you to protect what he built. He wanted you to become more than even he could imagine. I knew he was right. Because that was the thing about love, the real kind, the kind that builds and doesn't take. It doesn't bind you to the past. It gives you the courage to outgrow it. A week later, I received a letter from the mayor's office. They wanted to recognize the Franklin Foundation for its impact on youth development. At the same event, the city council was planning to name a section of the downtown Riverwalk after my grandfather. The Franklin Way. I cried when I read it. Kyle was the one who submitted the nomination. He kept it a surprise. His only request was that I write the acceptance speech. On the day of the event, as the ribbon was cut and the brass plaque unveiled, I stood in front of a crowd and told them the truth. That man didn't raise me to chase power. He raised me to protect integrity. To stand firm in storms. To speak up when everyone else stayed silent. This isn't just about the Franklin name, it's about every person who's been told they're not enough. Every woman who was told to stay quiet. Every daughter who was asked to hand over what she rightfully earned. To all of you, I say, you don't owe anyone your silence. Especially not the ones who only show up to take. Applause erupted. But I wasn't looking at the crowd. I was looking at the sky. Because somehow, I felt him there. Watching. Smiling. Proud. Afterward, as we walked along the Riverwalk, Mom took my arm gently. I was going to fight you for all of it, she whispered. The stores. The money. Even the house. But now I see. I wouldn't have known what to do with it. She paused, tears forming. You didn't just protect it. You made it beautiful. That moment was all I ever really wanted from her, not an apology, not her approval, just acknowledgement that what I had done mattered. That I mattered. We stood there, the river glistening beside us, and I finally felt it, not just peace. Closure. The final chapter of this story wasn't written in fire or fury. It was written in calm mornings, open doors, and the gentle rhythm of a life rebuilt, not perfectly, but intentionally. A year after Grandpa Franklin passed, the world he left behind didn't just survive. It bloomed. The Franklin Foundation had expanded into 3 counties, offering mentorship programs, startup grants, and trade skill training for over 200 young people. We partnered with local schools and community centers, and even helped a former foster kid open her own landscaping business. Her name was Amira, and when she handed me her first business card with shaking hands, she whispered, "You gave me what no one else would believe." At the Savannah headquarters, our once failing flagship store now had a steady footfall and the highest customer satisfaction score in our region. The Green Corner had tripled in size and was featured in a statewide sustainability magazine. Kyle, now in his final year of business school, had become more than my right hand, he was a visionary. He pitched a franchising strategy that we piloted in Augusta, and it exceeded every projection. One evening after reviewing the quarterly numbers, he looked at me with teary eyes and said, "We're not just surviving anymore, Gale. We're leading." Vanessa continued her volunteer work. She'd enrolled in an evening program for social work and often shared case studies with me about women fighting their way out of broken systems. She'd grown quieter, more reflective, but stronger. She once told me, "We all carry legacies, Gale. The question is, do we repeat them or repair them?" And Mom? She never asked to move into a bigger house again. She didn't push her way into family photos or give backhanded compliments. She just showed up. For therapy. For Kyle's presentations. For Vanessa's milestones. She kept to her modest life, reading, gardening, occasionally writing letters she never sent. And when she did speak, it was no longer to command. It was to ask. To learn. One Sunday afternoon, she invited all three of us to dinner. Her hands were flour-dusted from baking cornbread, her hair pinned up simply, and her voice was humble as she said grace over the food. No lectures. No guilt. Just presence. As we ate, she said quietly, "This is all I ever really wanted. To sit at a table with my children and not feel like a stranger." I looked at Kyle. Then Vanessa. Then back at her. "You're not a stranger, Mom," I said. "You're part of what we're still healing. And part of what we've built." Tears slid down her cheeks. But this time, none of us looked away. When the wedding day arrived, it wasn't held in some grand ballroom or exclusive resort. It was in the courtyard of the Macon showroom, under strings of Edison lights and wooden archways Kyle had designed himself. The same space where we had once taught DIY classes and hosted community barbecues was now filled with laughter, music, and love. Ben stood at the end of the aisle, his face a calm I had leaned on for years. My dress wasn't couture. It was handmade by a local seamstress we'd supported through the foundation. And when I walked down the aisle, I wasn't alone. Kyle took one arm. Vanessa took the other. Halfway there, Mom stepped into the path and gently joined us, placing her hand on mine for just a second, before stepping aside again. And in that one moment, I saw what redemption could look like, not erasing pain, but growing from it. Not forgetting the past, but choosing not to let it rule the future. After we exchanged vows, Ben held my hands and said softly, "You've already built a kingdom, Gale. I just want to live in it with you." I laughed through my tears. "Only if you're ready for a queen who carries toolkits." Everyone laughed. But behind the laughter was something deeper. Freedom. The night ended beneath stars and the soft hum of crickets. As the final guests left, I stood alone for a moment, staring out at the trees swaying in the breeze. I pulled out Grandpa Franklin's letter from my pocket, now worn from time and rereads. Build something. Share it. Protect it. I had done that. Not just for me, but for everyone who came after. For the girl who once cried alone in a bedroom she thought she'd lose. For the brother who learned what loyalty really meant. For the sister who chose truth over comfort. Even for the mother who unlearned what control could never give her. And for every person who's ever been told they don't deserve the very things they've worked for with bleeding hands and a quiet heart. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a revolution, quiet, rooted, and undeniable. Some inheritances are measured in numbers. Others are measured in scars, in values, and in the choices we make when no one believes in us. Gale's story proves one thing: your power isn't in what you've been given, it's in what you choose to protect. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Who in your life would have been proud of how far you've come? Subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more stories about dignity, redemption, and the strength to reclaim what's yours.